So welcome back to the Wedding Capture Co, a podcast for wedding photographers and videographers, with myself, Tom, and my good buddy, Chris. And you'll also notice today that we will be joined by a guest, and we have the lovely Hannah MacGregor coming in to talk all things hybrid shooting. That's right, she started her career as a photographer and now offers highlight videos shot alongside her photography practice by herself on the day. It's a super long chat, but also a really informal one, and hopefully with loads of takeaways about how she manages to shoot both photo and video on a wedding. I think we should start with the foot.
Yes, 2 weeks ago on Sunday, I made the most ridiculous decision of my life to hop off the sofa, having sat on my foot. My foot was completely numb and my toes curled underneath me and my whole body weight snapped my foot in half. Not advisable.
Ouch.
And I thought it was just going to be a bad sprain. I was so convinced that it wasn't a break. Maybe that's just wishful thinking. But after an X-ray and a CT scan, I fractured it and torn the ligaments across the top.
And I think it's been 2 weeks and you still haven't come up with a really fancy story.
No, I know.
This is so much more dramatic than I got off the sofa.
I've had so many people go skiing accident, and I'm like, no, the sofa. And I could at least fall out of a wheelie bin having had
at least have been drunk or something.
Tequila.
That's it. Yeah.
There was a photographer that broke her leg, walking up the aisle, wasn't there?
Really?
Yeah, was walking backwards down the aisle and then fell over and broke her leg. That was it. She had to get someone else in for the day.
Oh my goodness. Yeah,
Imagine that.
I don't know if it's lucky that it's this time of year, but certainly, obviously, we're not.
That's what I said to you, isn't it? I was lucky it's January and not in the middle of the...
Yeah,
it's not lucky at all.
It's still frustrating because I've got 4 weeks in the boot and I've had to have one wedding that unfortunately I had to cancel and they didn't want an associate to shoot. I've got 2 newborn shoots that I'm going to try and do. I'm going to have a driver and have someone come with me that's also a photographer so if I need to take breaks and sit down that they could take over, because obviously a newborn shoot is fairly slow anyway. And then I've got a couple of corporates at the beginning of February that I'm hoping somebody else will cover and I'll edit.
That's cool.
And then by March, I'm hoping I'll be running again. But let's see. The problem is I may not be able to drive for some time because if you can't do an emergency stop, and you can't put your full weight down on the brake, then you're not legal to drive.
So you'll be looking for a second shooter / driver.
Just a driver,
basically I need to hire a driver for 2025 because I'm bougie now.
If you can carry all the gear, carry me up and down the stairs and drive me.
Sorry, could you just do all the hard work and then just take me to wherever I need to go?
That's it. So from chauffeur driven and the rest of it, I guess we should be thankful that you're even talking to us.
Well, I'm here. I made it up the stairs.
And obviously, for those of you listening to us for the last 5 minutes, I think you should introduce yourself, Hannah, and tell the world who you are.
Tell us a bit about you.
Oh, gosh. Okay. I am Hannah MacGregor of Hannah MacGregor Photo and Film. Feels like that's my full title when I answer the phone these days. Photo and Film. And I have done weddings for almost 2 decades. So old. So I started shooting in 2007, 2008, and then introduced doing highlight films and hybrid almost 8 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So I've done photo and film.
I didn't realise it was quite that early on.
Yeah, I think I did a course in the end of 2017, and by 2018 I'd kind of rolled it out.
A hybrid course or a film course?
No, a hybrid course. So Camera Hannah had run that, and was one of the only people at the time to be doing it. And I was like, I've been doing weddings for 10 years. Bored sounds awful, but I was competent at taking photos after 10 years, maybe. And I wanted to add something else in. And when I did her course, I was like, this is life-changing.
Yeah.
I can add this in, and slowly... And, kind of not every wedding was taking it at the time. And it was, it was a bit of a kind of roll it out then. But so from 2018, I've been doing hybrid.
Yeah, I find that really interesting. I didn't think last year. I started shooting weddings 2009, 2010.
Okay.
Kind of going more full-time 2015. And even then, we've spoken about this on the pod before, is that I even feel that back then I would probably only work with a videographer on the odd couple of weddings a year, where now it's more often that I work with video than I don't. But even trying to think of that, having that conversation of hybrid, you know, back then, that
seems strange.
seems wild.
It must have been quite rare at the time to do that.
Yes, and the cameras obviously didn't have any tracking abilities
Yeah.
either. So, like, if a couple were walking towards you, you were manually focusing as they came towards you. So the quality of my videos from 2018 are certainly not as good as they are now. But I have had the skill of being able to do both.
Yeah.
But also you built it up now as well.
Yeah.
Built up those video skills as well. So that
Yes, and then probably 2020, so it's like a couple of years later, as kind of over lockdown, then I looked into audio.
Okay.
And that was when I
So
thought,
those first couple of years,
it was just, let me see if I can get a few little clips in between. And it maybe I did 3 or 4 where I didn't tell the bride and groom.
Okay.
Didn't offer it as a kind of like, this is part of your package.
that's the best way to do it,
especially
isn't
when
it?
you're manually pulling
Sneaky.
focus and stuff as well. So if you completely
It was really
throw
scary.
the aisle walk or something like that. You've got-
So I've done both for a long time now, and then in the last 18 months I've taught over 30 photographers how to do both too.
Wow.
That's amazing.
So going back to when you started,
Yes.
what was the reason you initially, did you just see it online, like see someone that did it and thought that was...
For hybrid?
what was the reason you initially went into hybrid?
I'd followed Camera Hannah. I don't know if back in the day, I don't even know if it was Instagram rather than Facebook, but I was kind of, just keeping an eye out to what everybody else was up to. And I knew that my camera could video.
Yeah.
And I'd probably once
What did you have
videoed
at
my
the time?
desk. Probably a 5D Mark II.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. Which is
Maybe.
probably one
Makes
of the first
sense.
full frame
Yeah.
cameras to have video on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And
I think the 5Ds were like the
Yeah.
ones that introduced video to SLRs and in
Yeah.
a good way, weren't they? I think.
Yeah, and literally I was like videoing my desk. And I go, cool, it can video, great, okay, forget about that. And I'd seen her course and just thought, do you know what, this is quite exciting to add something new. And in, when you've been doing any job for a long time, but I was almost 10 years in at that point, and I kind of felt like my photos were only telling a little bit of the story, and bringing it to life with a little bit of video was interesting to me as a concept, and I felt like was pushing my creativity.
That's what I was
that
going to
much
ask.
more.
When you first said about that kind of piquing your interest, or that it was a new challenge. That's what I was going to say. There was there kind of this sort of more sentimental light bulb of like kind of having a video play out rather than just a still, or was it more or less I'm good at my job. I want that's the next
probably
challenge.
a little bit of both. I think there's a business why for couples in terms of like what could I offer that's different, and that we don't tend to, people don't sit and watch photo slideshows for hours, but people will watch films for hours.
Yeah.
And I was very aware that I loved watching wedding videos too, and that a lot of the videos that were around at that time seemed a little bit dated.
Yeah.
And the way that Camera Hannah was doing them, not me. I'm talking about myself in that way. The Camera Hannah was putting out those videos, were handheld, were kind of in the moment, and looked like her photography. And I felt like this was a thing that I could try and trial.
And I guess that's some of it, isn't it? As we are sat here in 2025, it's remembering that 2018, 7 years ago, doesn't seem like that long ago, but like you say, that's probably really early days of Instagram.
Yep.
Again, in terms of camera tech,
Yep.
where you're at, and even phone tech. Really, you think now, like, obviously, we're in a world where we have content creation, and you can make fairly impressive kind of footage from the phone in your pocket. Where the guests at the time, because maybe Facebook was a thing, but maybe Instagram and creating reels and making kind of that video trend wasn't there.
No,
you
not at
probably
all.
wouldn't have had a wealth of guests at those weddings. Kind of, those phones wouldn't have been out for the confetti throw and stuff. So for you
because
to
the
offer
iPhone
that,
couldn't take photos in the same way our cameras could then, but then our cameras now can take much sharper, much, more accurate photos. I mean, almost I would expect my camera at the time that 1 in 3 would be out of focus. And not because I didn't know what I was doing, but
That was
the
just
cameras
normal
just,
for
it was
what it
just
was.
almost,
Yeah. SLRs, wasn't it?
you'd look
Yeah.
through going, oh no, fluffed it. Oh, that one's all right. And that was kind of like expected.
Didn't you always prefer that though? Like, I find that when I moved to Sony from the Nikon SLRs, is that in some ways my culling was easier because your choice was the photo that you liked and also the one that was in focus. Where now when you can kind of shoot a
Almost
burst
everything's
of
great.
everything in focus, and you kind of go, well, I've got marginally more choice now.
I think, though, that for me, flipping that on its head, that if more of it is in focus and more of it's reliable, one, it means I can nail the photos that much quicker because I can trust in my kit that much more. And I think when I certainly when I went mirrorless, but when I've upgraded my lenses to be more reliable glass, that the more photos that were in focus, the more I was like, oh, I can be really creative. I can nail the safe shot, then I can be creative, and then I got time for video too.
I imagine it's got easier over the years with better equipment, faster switching between photo and video and that kind of thing.
Even now, like with the new camera that just come out that allows you to record and shoot at the same time.
I know, I haven't had to play with that yet. I'm like,
that sounds like it's going to be a game changer for that kind of thing. But yeah, even 8 years ago, wasn't it? So 2017, that was when I went full time. And even at that point, I was working with a lot of photographers who were just like, oh, what are you doing here? I'm doing videos. Like, oh, I've not worked with a videographer in years. And it's it's sort of like, some photographers called it like the second wave of videography, where like you got the people with the big old cameras on the shoulders and camcorders and things like that.
A couple of those guys,
then you had nothing for a bit, and then it was like, I think it sort of kicked off in America again, the cinematic style and things were slowly starting to build up. But then video wasn't really something that a lot of people were considering. Or it was still considered to be that old school, camcorder.
I think it's obviously, again, it's people, like, I guess with weddings, that's a precious thing, aren't they? Is nobody really wants to take a chance on something, do they? They want to be quite safe in that this will be okay. And if, their parents or whatever, if they're going, well, I definitely don't want this 3-hour documentary, like, camcorder thing.
When would I ever watch that?
But then you see, like, a really cinematic kind of thing and go, well, that's not maybe, that's maybe too over the top. How do you kind of broach something in the middle? And I guess when there's not a wealth of other people doing it, it's having people who've seen, I've seen that and can relate to it. Whereas if you're offering something really quite new, I guess some of those first couples that took it on were kind of a little bit of a leap of faith to go, well, we don't really know what we're going to get.
No, and certainly the ones that didn't know I was doing it then would get it as a Brucey bonus and be like, oh my God, my mind is, when on earth did you have time to do this? And that was when I kind of, the recognition from the couples so quickly of like, oh my God, we love this. And them telling me, we've watched that video like over and over and over again.
You start to realise there's something in this.
Yeah.
And I guess at that time as well, obviously then with that, I'm not kind of dumbing down what you do at all, but that was no audio as well.
Yeah.
That was literally just moving pictures, essentially.
Yeah, you're just bringing the photos to life. It wasn't as if that you were kind of bringing some audio in. There wasn't that, kind of literally that you only had visuals to build narrative with it. Yeah. It wasn't as if you were kind of managing to overlay files or anything. So no, I kept it really, really simple. And in that first, like, probably 2 years, like almost pre-lockdown life, I think, like, admitting this feels like a kind of like, I was kind of making it up as I went along, but I was editing in like iMovie. Like I wasn't even trying to I wasn't trying to pretend to be anything that I wasn't. I was bringing my photos alive for a few seconds, throwing the clips together. It was really shaky at times. I wasn't kind of telling us, I was kind of like not even being as conscious as I am now about how I put the story together and how it kind of works as a 5-minute video. I was like, this is a bonus.
But it's like you said before, it's an extension to your photography. It's like your photos, but they move for a few seconds and you've edited them together. Yeah. And it's not like what videographers are doing now, or even what you do in some of your films now, where like you're editing it together with bits from the speeches and that kind of thing and trying to make a story out of it. It's literally, here's the photos that you've got in your gallery, but in video form, and you can see yourself moving and that kind of thing. And that's kind of how it started, I guess.
Completely. Yeah. And now, 8 years later, there is some people that have looked at my videos and assume that I'm only doing video, or that that they don't realise that I've done both. That they're like, oh my God, your videos are amazing. And I'm like, thanks, I also delivered 800 photos. And they're like, what? I don't understand how you're managing the quality and the consistency. And I think now, with my work in probably the last 2-3 years, every single wedding video and photos, whether I'm doing it on my own or having a second shooter, there's a real consistent look to how the story comes about, how I'm using audio, and how I've kind of retrained my own kind of
definitely.
story
over the course of 6-8 years though, do you almost feel grateful that when you did start and you had that that first couple of years as a real kind of learning curve, is that there wasn't a wealth of kind of people that were really good? Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You didn't feel that pressure of, I have to be editing in Final Cut, I have to be doing this. No. Almost you had it as kind of your playground, because it was still seemed that it was better than, or there wasn't an expectation from your couples to go, well, we've seen this video online and it needs we're to expecting be this. That.
I think there's probably more pressure now in that, one, I've kind of placed myself in the market as an educator, and then people are like, oh, well, yours need to be like every time I put a video out, I know that not just couples and the bridesmaids are looking at it, but videographers and photographers and people that follow me and go, oh, I want my work to look like where yours is at, that I have to make sure that mine is still hitting that standard each time.
But to have that ability to almost learn on the job, if you like,
completely.
or you feel that or come in with a wealth of skills as a photographer already, like you'd think that obviously at that level of, say, like kind of preemptive moments, composition, all the rest of that was there. But it's that, and I know for me that's not a videographer, I kind of think that if someone gave me a camera, I would like to think that I could maybe frame up and record a decent shot.
I mean,
even beginning...
There's so much skills you already have as a photographer that you almost don't realise that you have. To apply that, can be moved over and used for
a lot of photographers
video.
do say to me, like, I wouldn't even know how to start with doing video. And it's like, if you just switched it over and framed it up, you would be able to do it.
You know what, the idea of filming, like sometimes I see stuff and think, do you know what, I could, if this could play out in video, the way that it's framed and it looks, that could be really magical. But then like when you talk about this kind of like, kind of standing there like a painter before your canvas, which is basically a blank timeline with
doing
500 clips and not knowing where to begin. It's that process, I think, that would just cripple me enough to not start. Where I know that, with photo, is that I get the images, they're all in kind of time order over 3 cameras. You cull it, you start at the beginning, you finish at the end, and you just rip through. Where to sit there with something going, well, what's the first clip?
You've got to put the first clip on.
Where do I go from there?
But I think, and maybe that's because I've done this job for so long, that first 10 years of just doing photos, I was taught back in the day to shoot for a wedding album.
Yeah.
And so maybe that kind of like storytelling of you going, what's the first clip is what's the first page in the album. Like I would shoot photos thinking, okay, the first 3 layouts are going to be shoes, dress, building. Like that. I was almost storyboarding in an album in the way you would do for putting my videos together.
That's mad, I was thinking, like, if I build an album now, like the first shot, like you say, is on when like either the venue or maybe you grab something from later on, like the couple shot for like the first page, and then you jump into the story. And then I guess a video.
It's doing the same.
So
it's
good.
just bringing it to life. And I think I had years where in 2007, 2008, actually, we didn't really shoot for the digitals. And for handing over a CD. We didn't do USBs in those days. It was a CD.
I was on CDs. You print the little thing off and stick it to it.
And like print straight onto the CD was very exciting in a little silver disc case so that you could see it through the disc. That actually shooting for a wedding album like that, for me, I think made the transition over to what elements need to be in this to tell the story.
And I guess as well, like, kind of without jumping like kind of ahead or dwelling on that too much, is I feel that only over the last 2 or 3 years, the amount of portrait frames that I take on a wedding day now has soared. Because of Instagram and preferring that vertical. Where I reckon if I look back at those probably early years at a similar time to then, 2018, 2019, I was probably delivering 95%, maybe even more than that, landscape shots. So there wasn't that, that kind of alien nature of you frame something and then go, oh, there's the still, and then filming it. That would then, I guess, feel more natural, where now you're trying to get, a landscape, a portrait, and all of that in the stills. Now to kind of think, try and add video into that as well. That would be even more overwhelming. But I guess back then, it was one of the expectation of like you said, with albums and kind of the stills were very different.
If you could create an album with maybe 120, 150 images, that's what you were looking to tell the story. And almost you would kind of have that in your mind of, well, people aren't going to put every photo up on their mantelpiece, right? And that's still the same today. I mean, you can get a digital frame and play all 800 photos. And I, joke with couples. They're coming back.
They're making a comeback. But they're better.
I've joked with couples of like, if you want to make wallpaper out of your photos, you want to make bed covers, you can do what you want with them. But most of the time, people are going to pick, 15 pictures and maybe put them around the house, or the group shots that we go, oh, okay, here's a list of group shots, are typically still the one that get printed the most for
for parents and grandparents, definitely.
For the mantelpiece photos, are still kind of key and important. So I think the switch for me to both was probably less of a jump when it comes to the storytelling side.
So I imagine when you started then, you could probably look through like one of your albums and flick through as you're watching the video, and you would pretty much see like a similar order. Like
yes, and I have now one of the things I say when I'm teaching people to try and get in the headset of doing both is don't try and reinvent the wheel from your photos to shooting a bit of video. That I think you can kind of end up thinking that it needs to be a completely different shot or a different frame or different light or my point for how I'm trying to deliver something is that the film will very much match the photos.
It's going to be inconsistent. Even your color grading matches.
Everything
and
matches.
I've seen very recently, I keep getting advertised on Instagram, this software or like thing, like a website that you upload a photo to. Any photo, could be an old photo, and it will change it into like a 3 to 4 second video. And it's so popular. And morally, I don't know whether that's...
photos alive thing.
Yeah,
I've seen it.
I don't know whether that's it's a bit
Yeah.
strange, but it looks really good.
Yeah.
But it's a bit like, is this right? Because it's a moment that never actually happened. But it shows the value in what people place in, I really wish that was moving.
Yes.
And all you're doing is then bringing that thing that could have just been a still into something that's moving, and you're not necessarily getting a gimbal out and trying to, or like a drone and doing all these
I don't have anywhere on my website that I'm a videographer, and I kind of like really try and, certainly from like first point with couples, not overpromise anything. And I think actually most of them on my website talks about me being a photographer, and it's about the photos, and there is a page dedicated to, and here are the highlight films, but I don't want to be known as a videographer because I don't have the full skill set to call myself a videographer.
Do you not think?
No, not at all. I think like I know enough to get by, a bit like my parents.
If you're recording audio and you're recording clips, though,
I think if you just did video, you could call yourself a videographer.
Potentially, but I still feel like that I have a lot more to learn.
Okay.
If I was going to go, if I wanted my films to look like a full experience beyond little clips.
Do you think you would find that hard though, because you've come from a photo side, then added the hybrid in? If you ever got to a point where you're like, I'm just going to film this, there would still be part of you that would want to be grabbing those stills because you've built that kind of system.
Sometimes at weddings where I'm only asked to do photography, and I have some weddings that don't book me for both, I go to turn to the settings to go straight to video. That I'm like, I've got it in photos, and I'm like, oh God, no, I don't need to. And I do it almost instinctively. That I'm like, okay, got that now. Change it.
Is there many now though that don't, or you finding that?
It's probably 80-20 that do book me to
also
do
as
that.
well, I think kind of on that I wanted to ask is that obviously, we talk as kind of industry people, hybrid shooting and this and that, and understand the difference. Like obviously your website is really detailed and it does a really good job of laying it out. But are you finding that the couples that approach you, are they fairly clued up on what to expect from a hybrid film against having a video?
Yeah, I think more so now, probably in the last, I think the term hybrid maybe was just an industry term for a little while. And I think it just says highlight films on my website. I don't really push the word hybrid massively. I think that's what photographers call it rather than what clients would call it. I think no
one Googles hybrid.
No, I don't think so.
You don't need to make your H1 Surrey hybrid photographer. You're not a hybrid photographer, are you? Because then you could be. What do you call it?
So I think pushing myself as a photographer first and foremost, and I approach the day as a photographer first and foremost, that's the most important things. And unless a couple have asked me to prioritise filming for a moment, and I will always run through the most important moments where it might be tricky to get both with a couple and say, do you have a preference? That it's more important for you that it's in the film than it's photos? Because my go-to will be that I'll take the photos first. And if then I can get video, that's the bonus. There's a few occasions.
So is that how you normally shoot? If you were shooting, you would do stills first
and
then film second?
Mindset for it. So I basically kind of try and slow time down massively in my head and not go, this moment's happening really fast if I don't get it, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I think it's really easy, whether you're doing photos or film or both, to get a bit anxious. Because some moments on a wedding day feel like they're happening at 100 miles an hour and you've lost control. And the
internal meltdown is you're just sort of acting casual, but then you're just
we're really good at being that proverbial swan though, aren't we?
Completely.
When you're still at the top of an aisle and you know that probably they're not looking at you, they're looking at the bride, they're looking at the groom, but you're still there. And if you had this face of complete calm, and I've had it times when my camera's just locked up or you're thinking, that person's in the way, and you're having this massive internal kind of monologue of meltdown.
My camera's overheated during a ceremony and it's overheating right in front of me, and I'm just like,
But tell myself, and maybe this is more kind of like mentally than it is actually what happens, but I tell myself most things are going to happen for more than 30 seconds, right?
Yeah.
First dance, the ceremony's 12 to 15 minutes, even if it's a registry office or, you're lucky if it's...
Ceremonies are fairly repetitive.
Yeah, and so there's a fair amount of things that will happen for longer than 30 seconds. And if I can nail the photos in that first 7 to 10 seconds...
Yeah.
I've got 20 odd seconds to kind of get some video footage. And most of my video clips that I'm recording are somewhere between 5 and 10 seconds, and I'll use 1 to 2 seconds of them.
Okay, that's interesting, only because of the fact that I've had obviously a couple of other hybrid shooters speak, and they were saying that in terms of kind of just the technical aspect of the cameras, that they would film first, because obviously if you shoot in a burst of frames, your camera takes a while to buffer those shots onto 2 cards, where obviously if you film, it records in real time, so the second that you stop recording, you can then switch to photo, where obviously if you were taking photo first, you've got to wait for that buffer to clear before you can start filming.
I mean, I shoot with 2 cameras, so
on similar focal lengths then, so...
Quite often, or I'll keep the 28-70 on one of them all day long.
I'm shooter, so for me I'd be moving from 35 to 85. I suppose if you got that versatility.
The 28-70 just is a really good backup to keep.
You've just bought the Sony one, haven't you?
The Sony one.
Oh my god!
We shot together just before Christmas, and you were like, it's like cheat codes. Like
It just feels like I'm not putting any effort because I'm not switching lenses, and with 2 cameras hanging off me, I'm just using one 28-70 f2 all day, pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, it's become my kind of workhorse. But it means if I've got a 35 or a 50 or 85, I have a massive bum bag that I wear, like a one-man band, keeping everything on me. So I'll pretty much any moment I think is going to be quick, confetti, walking out, anything where I'm like, I may have to jump to the other camera, both are ready to be photos or film in the right settings, in the right light in that moment, so that if one is buffering, I don't go, hurrah! I've actually can just pick up the other camera and
so are you
ready
finding,
to go
again,
for it.
without getting super technical, and I'm probably not the best person
No,
to
get
ask you this anyway, but are you finding, because again, listening to kind of what other people are saying, so are you physically turning that dial on top of your camera from stills to movie? You're not just leaving your settings for stills and just hitting record?
No, because going
with what the settings are.
One, because I'm a control freak, and I want my video to have stylistically the same look as my photography, and if I rely on the camera to just press record, it's not always going to look exactly as I need it to expose it correctly, to have the f-stop where I want it to be, where it needs to be, to kind of for the scene to work well for photos, and then for
so does that
video.
differ then, you're finding, obviously, because I shoot predominantly not completely wide open, but like if I get above f2.8 at dizzy heights,
we're like, woohoo,
everything's shot wide, where pretty much and that's where I might even I might creep to f4 for everybody,
you crazy kid.
But everything beyond that shot at like 2, so I guess for video, is that make it more difficult then with focus? And
I mean, and I think the videographer in the room may tell me off for kind of like shutter speeds and things, but because
I'm
is
this
a safe space? But actually, I'm so kind of conscious of like not worrying too much about the settings, and I think it's really easy, and that's where I say, like, am I really a videographer? Am I kind of faking it to make it? And the clips come out well enough that it works for what I'm producing.
So what gear are you using? So talk us through like what you've got on each side and that kind of thing.
So I shoot on Canon R6s.
The Mark IIs or
no, first. So I got the first one, and at the time still had a 5D Mark III, and got one, and then was like, oh man, I need them to be the same, because I was just using the R6 the whole time, and I was ignoring the other camera. And then I was
know people have done that as well. They upgraded one camera and be like, I'll upgrade one for now, and then like the first few weddings, no, needs to do that.
I did for a year. When I bought my first Sony, I was still shooting one Nikon and the Sony.
I think because the settings need to be the same, and like even just instinctively back button focus just and everything being exactly the same, it was almost too much to kind of like, it's almost like getting into 2 different cars and then going, I can't remember how to do the windscreen wiper.
Where's the buttons?
You're trying to indicate and you just blasting your flashes.
So I very quickly had then 2. I got the 28-70 f2 last year, I think. And so that's become, I have never been someone who tended to shoot on Zooms for a long time.
No, same, but that just changes it in a way, doesn't it?
It's such a kind of, if you can hear the bells.
What is it? Is
it midday?
It is, We've got 12 of those suckers coming.
So I've found that's been a lens that I'm kind of leaning towards quite a bit.
I found its headspace. It eliminates all of that. Okay, what focal length do I need for this bit that I'm about to go into?
Yeah,
and instead you've pretty much got it is heavy. Yeah, the Sony one is about 400 grams lighter.
Is it?
Which is just it. Yeah, it's much nicer because I remember I rented out the R6 Mark II.
Okay.
And that 28-70, and by the end of it, my wrist was hurting. I was like, I need to exercise just to hold this lens.
But we spoke about this in the past, haven't we? And I found moving. I was, for the kind of again those early years of my career, would shoot with say a 24-70 on one camera and then a fixed a 50 or an 85 on the other. But then I found that since moving to purely primes, my composition has gone through the roof because I wouldn't be mindful enough
to move your feet,
to move my feet with a zoom. Yeah, I would stand, within 2 foot of a group of people and shoot a group photo at 28, where I know that photo looks best if it's taken probably at least 50 and be further back. Yeah. But I wouldn't be mindful enough on the day to go, I'm going to turn this to 50 and then move my feet around. Where with a prime I have to. Yeah. So to kind of have that added level of discipline as well.
I think it's a nice safety lens because you can, if you get stuck, and certainly for film, what I can't, in the same way that I don't want my photos to not have variety. Yeah. And just look like the same focal length, if I shot the whole thing on a 50 or the whole thing on a 35. With film clips, certainly like for the ceremony, if I'm stuck in one place and I only have a chance to kind of crop a tiny bit, actually having a zoom that then means I can get a wide shot of church, registry office, whatever it is, to kind of get some building stuff and then get nice and close. And I tend to then have the 85 on the other camera until later in the day that the 85 maybe seems a bit too close if I'm then indoors and people.
The 85 is sort of like a go-to though, isn't it?
And I love it for video. I think it's so creamy and
if I had space after to you, I love my 85 that much that I reckon as long as I had room to move back enough, I would love to shoot a whole wedding on an 85.
I've never got on with it for video. I don't know why.
Kind of just the look of it. But again, for me, normally now, as soon as I get to dinner, it comes off the camera. Unless I've got it's a summer wedding where you've got that long kind of second round of drinks.
Absolutely.
But the second once you're getting into kind of, cake and dancing and that stuff, it's just...
No, that's when the 50 and the 35 kind of come into their own. And there may be times when I take the 28-70 off and go that my old setup would have always been 35 and 50, kind of point at my hips because that's where they would be.
Do you have set systems as well? Because I always find that there's when I shoot, I always have to have the wider. I'm left-handed,
on the left.
The wide's on the left and the telly's on the right always, and it always goes out. And if I switch them,
it feels weird.
It feels weird.
No. It's
so which one of those is photo and video then? So or with the 28-70 in the effect? They're both. Okay, so you are flicking over as you're going along. Yeah,
and I think one of the first weddings I tried to stick to one camera was for photos, but then you're swapping over lenses because you're like, So actually having both for both tends to work better for me. Yeah. And I don't try, a bit like the kind of don't spray and pray for photos. That was an old phrase.
Yeah. I still use it all the time.
That phrase? Okay. And the same for video. I end up probably with 280 to 300 video clips. Wow. Mm-hmm. And probably 200 plus end up in the video. Yeah. So I'm almost using everything I do.
Yeah. In terms of cards, if you're obviously shooting stills as well, how many raws would you take on a day as well?
I'm typically for a full wedding day, maybe 7,000 to 8,000.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, quite a lot.
Yeah, I'd say
is that a lot?
I don't know. I don't know. Me, a full day is probably 3.5.
Okay.
To still deliver maybe 800 to 1,000. But I guess, do you think some of that's reflected in how much you need to get out of a short moment though? So maybe there is an element of in the photo.
You're taking more in that moment.
Maybe, and kind of making sure that I've got enough variety in the photos that also tell the story of that shooting for the album as well as shooting for the storytelling of the video.
But so you can say in terms of memory then, are you having to use big cards?
I tend to use 128s and 64s.
And change them?
Yeah, if I need to. I mean, I can probably, on the camera with the 85, get through one set of 128s, and that will be fine.
So you shoot overflow?
Yeah.
You're not shooting doubles?
They're shooting on both cards, and both are shooting photo and film on both.
Okay.
And then the other cards, I'll probably get through 2 sets of 128s on the camera that I'm using more.
Are they really fast cards? Because obviously you've got the buffering and when you take video in, I don't know, do you shoot in 4K?
That's what I was about to ask,
No.
Yeah, okay.
Most of the time I shoot in 1080.
So that'd be a little bit more savvy on the memory as well.
Yes, and I'm partly for file sizes and partly because that is my kind of I'm not delivering a videographer video.
Yeah.
I'm delivering a highlight video, and 1080 seems to be fine. On
But I
It
guess
is
it
fine,
means that you're very much, if you're at 1080 though, it's how you shoot it, it's how you see it.
Has to look.
Obviously, you don't have that ability to punch
crop
in
it,
like you would in a 4K. You could
No,
really
and like if you're going to recrop it slightly, or you get your horizontals wrong, any cropping on a 1080, you notice it fairly quickly. There's probably the odd occasion where I might go, okay, I'm going to shoot this in 4K, and that might be if I'm at the front of a ceremony and I know that I can't.
Yeah, even on the 85, they're still a little bit small. Where
Yeah, and I might know I want to kind of crop it later, or if I'm shooting some stuff for reels on a branding shoot, and I know that some of it's going to be really good wide for their website, but they'll probably want some reels cropped later. I might shoot that in 4K because
that's
then
definitely
I know
helpful for 4K.
when I crop it, I'm not going to worry so much about it being the middle frame
of a 1080
of a
image.
1080. So there's a few times when 4K is definitely useful, but most of the time from what I'm delivering, 1080 and shooting, 50 frames.
So when you're thinking about, I'm going to film this in 4K, I'm going to film this in 1080, are you then having to switch to video, set it up, and then switch back to photo, do your photos? And then...
Yeah, but it's such a rare occasion.
Okay, yeah.
Like if it's just before the ceremony,
yeah.
I know it in that moment. And maybe...
And I guess in that moment you have got time where you are kind of waiting for the registrars to do their little kind of bit, or the vicar or whatever,
I'm such an organised person, in terms of I've made a reel about this, but I make my screensaver the timings of a wedding. Did you see that? The night before every wedding? And also on that I have notes at the top of that will tell me if they've requested that the reveal to dad or to bridesmaids is going to be photo or film.
I love that idea, but I'd forget to change it back. So I'd change it in May, and then the May next year I'd be like, oh, this is last year's wedding. Now it's not changed.
Well, because I do it for every single wedding. My kids very rarely make my screensaver, but there's so often.
I change that level. I always make sure that I copy all of my information off of my note, like out of my questionnaire in my CRM, and I move it into an Apple Note on my phone and make sure it's synced.
So having it as a screensaver, as soon as I
unlock the phone, but obviously it takes that step out.
It's just one step out, and then I'm also like, okay, I know that the ceremony might need me to do X, Y, and Z.
Well, I guess you just need to for that level of, if you're shooting say a double, and then that couple have got a different set of requests to those. I guess you have to be super organised, even just to facilitate both. But also as well is that sometimes, like we were talking earlier about those internal struggles, is sometimes I'm like, I stand somewhere and go, yeah, I want to be here. And you take a frame and go, do I want to be here? And then move again, where you have to be quite decisive of, I'm here, I'm doing it, and kind of...
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that, and also knowing that you haven't got a lot of opportunities to mess it up, really. Yeah. I mean, there's probably 2 or 3 occasions on a wedding day where I'm like the first kiss, for example, I will always try and photograph it and say to my couples, I'm going to photograph that first kiss. And as they sign the paperwork, tends to be then that I say, before you walk down the aisle, if you remember, have another kiss. I'm going to video that.
Don't you find that most couples do now anyway?
They quite often do, or they stop halfway.
In the middle of the aisle. I feel it's become a real thing.
But I asked them to do it.
Sometimes it's really awkward though, and they've planned it out a perfect lift, and then the groom is waiting for it the whole way down, and they're walking sideways, ready to do it. And
which sometimes is really awkward on video, and you're like, oh no, just walk.
The amount of them are cut out this year because you can tell the bride's gone, right, we need to do the dip. Don't forget the dip, and the groom's there looking really stiff as he's walking up the aisle.
I think sometimes we can set too much stall in those particular moments. Well, again, I've been doing this for 10 years now, and I know there's probably a handful of times where I've missed that first kiss. It's literally been such a quick peck, and you think like you would have to be like a far more skilled person than me to literally hit, if you're doing that, you might even get one frame out of it, or the vicar stood in the way, or you've kind of gone to move and then you've kind of eclipsed the registrar,
or there's so much confetti that's what's taking the focus.
And I kind of think in those moments, you might try and say, oh, can you just kiss again? If it doesn't happen though, I've delivered without a first kiss. And none of those couples have come back and gone, how dare you? That was the one, we made space over our mantelpiece for that photo.
Well, nobody wants a photo of them kissing, I don't think. Or nobody wants to...
I don't think anybody looks that good
to dwell on it for that.
When your face is smushed against somebody else. You've got to be a pretty dreamy looking person that when your nose...
We have quite a few photos like that from our first kiss, and it's just like, we just skip past them. We would never print them, we'd never show people them. It is what it is. It's a big moment.
Where they've kind of the noses have eclipsed, but they've not quite kissed. That can look far more kind of dreamy than a kiss.
But
I think think we do put so much expectation into
if
that
I missed
first
it.
kiss.
Yeah.
And I've even had a couple of couples over the last couple of years that haven't kissed because they haven't wanted to. They've just
had a few
big,
hugs,
a big hug or whatever.
I like
A
that
high
bit
five.
after the
I've had a
first
high
kiss.
five a couple of times. Yeah.
A bit after the first kiss where they turn and face their guests and do like a cheer.
Yeah, that's
the
enough, nice.
euphoric moment.
Say it's a moment of elation, isn't it? Or something. And sometimes that smile as they come back from their first kiss shows far more joy than.
Yes, absolutely.
But I think sometimes there's, particularly maybe when you're starting out, you put so much pressure that I have to nail. That's normally the first moment that people pick out is an aisle walk and a first kiss.
Yeah.
And I kind of think, no, like when
That's what you're told is important at the beginning.
Hours,
that's the thing. Yeah.
There'll be so many other
photo
things
in a thing.
Yeah. And I also think that kind of with how I'm working, generally, if I've missed it as a photo, I was filming.
Yeah.
And if I wasn't filming, I got a photo.
You've always
Have you
got
had that
something
safety a couple
rolling.
times where you've delivered screenshots?
No, I've never delivered a screenshot because I don't feel like that's how I work. And I've had a few people assume that that's how I'm delivering photos.
But in terms of quality, especially with a 1080 file,
so different. Yeah.
It's so different.
Yeah,
but I was just kind of wondering if it was a case of you get it or you don't.
Also, I'm so kind of hot on educating my couple on the run up of like what the expectations need to be. If you're just booking me and we haven't got a media team and there isn't somebody to like set up tripods and full speeches and all of that kind of stuff, and that there will be moments where I might be in the wrong place. I will try not to be, and I wear a cape at the best of times. And I try very hard to explain to my couples that, like, I almost lower the expectations and then over deliver, and they're like, oh my God, you did get everything. And I'm like, of course I did, because I'm going to try to. But if I tell you there's a chance that it might not happen.
We're really human, aren't we? Or
if they want to spend a little bit more money and have a second shooter, then the chances of those things being a definite.
Yeah.
And I've had maybe 3 or 4 weddings this year where like people have wanted to do a champagne spray at night, and it's just me, and I'm like, okay,
you got to pick one or the other.
Yeah, because that can be that's definitely less than 15 or 20 seconds.
Right? So I've got a tripod that I will set up, and I'll put one camera on the tripod to get it for video, and I will take stills handheld. And I've done that for a first look this year where they met at a staircase, and I set tripod up at the bottom of the stairs shooting up, and I stood almost at the side at the top of the stairs and got photos
and try not be in your own frame
and not be in my own pictures. And so like there is moments where if there's enough time I'll set up a tripod and manage to get both that way, but for confetti and the aisle walk and any moments like that, I don't really have time to be setting up and putting down tripods. So it's all handheld.
In terms of setting expectations for that then, so going back to, so if a couple inquires and says we want both photo and video, we've wanted a videographer for a while, how are you approaching that? Is there an element of, are you sure you want
I ask
hybrid?
I make sure I first and foremost go, this is what I'm able to deliver. Here is, I tend to send people like 5 or 6, especially if I've got one of their venue, but like 5 or 6 weddings where I've done both and go, here is their gallery, this is what the photos look like, and here's their video that matches. So they've got a real sense of exactly what the deliverables look like. Because it's all very well seeing on Instagram, 10 frames from that wedding, but actually I tend to show them, I do a first edit when I deliver my photos, which tends to be 250 photos within 10 days of the wedding.
Nice.
Normally within
it's quite
a week.
a big preview, isn't it?
Massive preview, because then I go, don't chase me, I gave you loads.
So do you find it interesting, we'll jump out of that for a second, so when, obviously, like I know from, you talk about lead times of editing video, do you try and then drop the full gallery and the video together, or that still comes in staggered?
No, I'm a real drip feeder of recovery, of giving
I call it waves of excitement rather than drip feeding.
Slowly but surely, but also it's touch points of communication. I find too, and if I can kind of keep that build going, there's not at any point that somebody goes, oh, Hannah hasn't been in touch for long enough, she's probably forgotten about our wedding, that I'm like, and here is a little more, and here's a little more, and actually that tends to lend itself in my favour, I think. Going back to when people first inquire, so I'll send them a really obvious, this is what I'm able to do. On the Zoom call, I really lay it out and go, if you at any point are thinking you're going to ask for full ceremony, full speeches, that's something, or full first dance, I'm not the right person for this. Book a dedicated wedding videographer.
And do you find you do work with videographers?
Probably.
With you doing
like
hybrid as well?
In the 20% of ones that don't book me to do both, either they've booked a videographer and they wanted something else, and it's quite often people I've recommended, so it's someone I'm happy to work with. And I've worked with videographers where I've done like a big Indian wedding, and it was only him, and he couldn't get the bride getting ready because the groom was already starting the ceremony, and I said, do you want me to get some video for you? And he was like, what? Are you sure? And had no idea that I would be able to. And it was,
But have there been instances where you've been shooting hybrid and there's been a videographer?
No, I had one wedding last summer where they booked me for hybrid.
Okay.
And then I got a message from them about 3 weeks before the wedding. And she said, just to let you know, we've also booked a videographer. And I went, whoa.
Well, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. And I kind of, like that instant of like, oh, this is going to be a really tricky conversation. I don't want to step on anyone else's toes. I don't want to be, either way, they're going to have a favourite, right?
Yeah.
Of the video afterwards. It's either going to be mine or his. Do I want to be trying to get both of confetti whilst I'm in his way and he's trying to get confetti?
You'll be getting the same shot.
Same.
Exact same
so
thing.
In all of these things, and it's how I handle most things, is can we jump on a call?
Yeah.
I always think it's so much easier to have that conversation rather
especially
than
when tone can be so misstrued, can't it, in WhatsApp or an email or whatever.
Like, oh no, it's my wedding. I don't want to share.
Passive aggressive email.
Before you know it, you've written 6 pages.
And you're like,
idea.
I've already had a cry. But so much. So I said, can we just jump on a call? And I said to her, I would rather refund you the money you've paid me to do hybrid video and concentrate on doing amazing photos for you. And they had 2 video guys rather than me trying to create a product that matches this thing that somebody else is trying to do too. I will sometimes have to ask people to do things twice, right? So I go, right, walk towards me, this is for photos, click, click, click.
Yeah.
We're going to just do that again for a little bit
Mainly
of video.
on couple shoots, that is, though, not like in the throes of a day.
Not
send
do
them
that
to the back of
again.
the aisle or make a picture.
Go again, can we go again? But for couple shots, I was really conscious that I was going to say, can I have that again? Because I've only got it once.
Yeah.
And that then he might want to do something different too.
Yeah.
So you'd then be doing things 3 times. So it was an slightly awkward conversation, but I just said to her, you wouldn't book 2 DJs, play them in different rooms and see who got the best dance floor.
But they got better results from it in the end because they got you focusing on photography. They got 2 videographers.
And who nailed the video and created a short film plus a longer version, plus all the speeches and ceremony.
Yeah, and you weren't stepping on each other's toes.
I felt way more comfy. That I wasn't going to try and battle that.
There wasn't that sense of competing then.
Yeah, I really felt that. And I also knew that like colour grading would look different. And then kind of like, well, they go, oh, we want it to look more like
his. Yeah.
His.
And the way they go, well, we actually prefer Hannah's grade. Can you make your film look
And
more
I was like,
like
oh, it's still awkward. I mean, I've done the odd corporate over the years where like, I've turned up as the photographer, but the magazine that I've been booked by the events company, and the magazine who's doing it have also got a photographer, and you're like, oh man, this is awkward.
I've had it once when I think it might have been around 2017 when I turned up and the photographer was doing a highlight video as well, and it was awkward. Like it was. We didn't know each other. It was like a bit like, you're on the confetti hour. It's like, well, I do need to get video, so you're going to need to move out of the way. So, I need to get video too. And it's like, it really doesn't work.
No, I don't think it does.
And it hasn't happened since.
There's a battle of interest. Like maybe I'll find it harder coming from a live music background.
Yeah.
Like kind of if you meet 6 other photographers in a very confined space, like 5 minutes before you start shooting, and you're all using the same cameras and taking pictures of the same thing.
Yeah.
And so, but you still have to try and be respectful regardless of who that person's shooting for, their experience level, and you hope that they give you the same courtesy, that they're not going to tuck themselves in that lovely spot between the speakers and then get their shot and move out and that you get it. They're not going to camp out or, like stand in front
and when
of
you don't
and
know
stuff.
who you're going to be working with, I didn't know what this videographer team would feel about me trying to get both. And I thought the best thing to do was to kind of have an open conversation with the couple, explain to them it made me feel a little bit uncomfortable, and it probably would be the same for the video team, and that they would probably get a better service with me not doing it.
And were they okay about it? They were fine.
I mean, I gave them their money back. They're not going to be not okay. But I think they felt that telling me to not do it was me losing out on money.
Yeah.
So they were trying to be kind to me.
Yeah.
But that's cool.
Both.
That honesty then sorted out. But then I guess if they turn around and go, no, because we want you to have both, then you to have video, that maybe
and I think I probably would have put my foot down that it wasn't right to do it.
Yeah. I think that conversation's coming up a bit more now with content creation. There's a lot of videographers out there with like the exclusivity contract, like photographers will not be taking video at this wedding. You agree that you've not booked a photographer to take hybrid. But with content creators, it's now a whole, like, because they're obviously taking video and then they're taking photo.
Do you
but
think
it's
that
like,
you will work with less content creators, though, because of offering the hybrid style?
I haven't worked with one yet, so maybe that's point in case. I wouldn't be against working with one, because I think it's a different offering.
Yeah.
And I think the quality of an iPhone whether it's on a gimbal or not,
Yeah.
it's still never going to match.
Yeah, because you are still colour grading your footage. You do still have that element of audio in places.
And I'm still editing something together that is to tell a story in quite a stylized way, whereas I think the content is just the content, right? It's how it happens. Some of it is quite often behind the scenes and showing us working. So I think I don't have a problem with it, and I've listened to a couple of podcasts of content creators and kind of gone, if I was a young bride now, would I want something within 48 hours? Yes. I think possibly why my couples might not end up booking a content creator is how quickly I deliver stuff. So that goes in my favour of like, you're not going to wait for weeks before you get something from me. I'm pretty hot on making sure they get 10 to 20 photo previews the next day.
Same, yeah. I do sneak peeks literally the next day.
Generally, if I've got time to, and I'm not height of season, but if I've got time to do a trailer for Instagram with video and photos, or a bit of behind the scenes and something that goes up with video fairly quickly, and then they'll get their first edit of photos.
Would you ever edit the photos into the video or put some stuff together? No, I don't either.
I don't like it.
That's like a real hybrid then, isn't it? Like, is it a slideshow? Is it a video?
Slideshow? I do a slideshow. When I deliver that first 250 pictures, they come as a slideshow to music. And I have done it before where I've put the vows in.
Okay.
Over the ceremony as a bit of an extra thing. I don't do it always, but when it kind of seemed to work, that it was like a 15 minutes of their vows and the slideshows, 15 minutes.
It leads it to your license,
it kind of worked creatively just to be something different. And so they've had the turnaround will be that they get the next day they get 10 to 20 images, then they get the 1 minute trailer, then within a week they've had 250 images, and then I kind of go, see you very soon. Have a lovely honeymoon. I'm checking out for a bit. But bye now. Leave me alone. I've got other things to do. And then I try to, on their month anniversary, so literally a month to the day, deliver the audio file.
Okay.
So I cut out all of the kind of rubbish that might be on it. And from the moment the walking down the aisle and then through to being announced as a couple, and then all of the speeches and like fade out the claps at the
and
back
how are you
of each
delivering
one.
that?
So I would deliver that on like as a file over on WhatsApp, and just literally say, this, I'm about to send you your wedding podcast, and call it their wedding podcast, and say, I'd like you on your one, or maybe send it the day before and say, on your 1 month anniversary, please take a long walk.
Oh, that's cool.
Take an AirPod each, listen to it, and this will take you back to your wedding day. Like,
it's
this
quite
is
nice,
a really
really.
nice
And I heard you
anniversary.
on another podcast talking about this, and it made me think about my actual films. So like my sort of 10, 15 minute, whatever it is, films, and how if you took away the music, because of the way that I lay out the speeches and kind of mix and match them and try and tell a story from them, it should work that if you took out all the music and just exported it as an audio file, it should work that it tells the story of them as a couple or their day, just listening to it without any clips.
The people from within the wedding telling the story.
And I think that's the kind of thing that, as a legacy from what we're delivering as weddings, and how important it is. I've had a couple of brides, having shot weddings for 18 years, I've had a couple of couples that have lost parents, and certainly dads that have made speeches, and I've had a couple of brides last year that messaged me and said, thank you so much for giving us the whole of Dad's speech as an audio file.
That's the biggest thing that I'm missing. I got married in 2014, the same, and my dad died in 2020. And I think that for me, if anyone says to me, do you think we should have a videographer? That's the first thing that I'd say to them, is the audio alone. Like, I feel that my photos serve that purpose enough that I can see him and see how happy he was. My grandparents, again, that were there and aren't there now. But for me, it's that. I think just to hear them laugh, or that clap, or that joy, or them talking, and the words I would give anything to have back.
A parent tends to say on a wedding day is how much they care about you, they're proud of you, they love you.
Things especially with dads, I feel that they might.
Always giving me goosebumps.
It's things that they might not say to you every day. They should, but they probably don't.
No.
But to have, to
hear that
on
back
that
is
kind
really
of more
special.
emotionally heightened day.
For
me, that audio would be that. If I could have one thing back from my wedding day, it would be that.
Which is really interesting, I think, even as a product from weddings, that perhaps people who don't want to do any video but could start like photographers.
It's something that I've toyed with because of that.
I was going to say this. Do you think that there's another way of doing it, and that you don't do photo and a highlight film, you do photo and then you record the ceremony and the speeches as
audio.
But again,
as audio or on one camera on a tripod
as well. I think even just hearing sounds like sound, I think, is people really underrate.
Yeah.
Like, and to go off on like an absolute wild tangent, like I've started listening to.
No, please do.
I've started listening to a podcast recently, and it's called Walk About the World.
Okay.
So for most people that watch this will know how much of a Disney World fan that I am.
Really?
And so basically, this guy wanders. He does set journeys.
Okay.
Around the parks or the hotel or wherever in Disney World, and he has like a little chat and talks about where he is.
Yeah.
And most of it though is just the sounds.
I love
and like
that.
hearing that lady that like kind of voiceovers the skyliner and tells you where you are, or that music when you walk onto Main Street.
Yeah.
Like, well, I haven't been for a while and I really want to go back. Just hearing those journeys and the bustle of the people and the cheers, that makes me feel so happy.
Yeah.
And if I could have a way where I could even just ambient audio of like laughter and chatting amongst the drinks, because there's always that one loud auntie who's booming laugh you'd hear over everybody else.
Yeah.
Or then that like through the speech, it's definitely something that I don't feel that kind of mindful enough to kind of say to do what you do, or even to record video, but just to kind of just have like a boom set up with a recorder like this and just kind of take this wealth of audio and then kind of soundscape your wedding at the end.
This is where modern wedding films maybe have a bit of a flaw to them, because I've noticed obviously like it's mostly edited to music. You've got music from start to finish, right? And so and so you don't get that, like you say, when people have got like a musician during a reception drinks and there's like a vibe and you can hear people talking and laughing, you can kind of hear that in the background for a lot of the films, but it's always got music somewhere in the background. So I've started incorporating in my films, like after the ceremony, there'll be maybe a 20-second bit where it'll just be the guy who's playing the guitar outside playing it, and then lots of like little clips of people talking, so that it's like, this is what it looked like
and what it felt like.
And I know someone that walks around the reception drinks just with a camera, not anything particularly artistic or whatever, for 5-10 minutes, and just gets like the ambience and then just sends them that 5 to 10 minute video.
But just to hear the wind on a windy day, or if you're by the sea, to hear the seagulls.
We're such old school romantic.
It's that stuff though, isn't it?
Completely.
But if you close your eyes, and it does take, especially because the people that we're delivering it to were there. It really does bring you back. My podcast that I listen to, I can close my eyes and I can picture exactly where that person is, and it takes you there. To have that embellished then with a film or with photo, but at a base level, I think that's something which is really, really underrated.
It's really powerful, and I think possibly, when we first started the podcast and you said, why do you do this? That bringing that to life thing of looking at a photo and seeing a moment and then seeing it move and then seeing it sound. And I did a reel recently that's a bride walking down the aisle with dad and granddad, walked her down the aisle. And I didn't, during the bride made a speech, and in her speech she said, I just want to take a moment to say thank you for dad and to granddad, who was 96, I think, for walking me down the aisle. And I put that audio over her walking down the aisle as a reel. Like just as a 30-second, no, I'm not even that, maybe like a 20-second clip, and it's had something like 158,000 views.
Wow. Yeah.
And it for me, it was one of those moments, as I heard her say it in the speech, I was like, I got the video of that. It was already puzzled in my head, and I thought it probably won't work for the 5-minute highlight film.
So that's a video for mindset, I think. When we listen to speeches, we're like, that's going in the highlight film.
Thank you so much for that. That's really helpful. And I think those kind of moments, the photo of her walking down with her dad and granddad is beautiful too. It's a really lovely moment, and you can see the emotion in it. But even her saying it and going, I'm never going to forget that moment whilst you see that moment, is like someone talking about their dream whilst you see a dreamscape.
Yeah, and I think
it's so much more powerful.
And it's hard, isn't it, to not almost become sometimes desensitised to that, because we do the volume of weddings that we do. And I say, like, harping it back to our own days, or seeing that, like, in the nicest will in the world, if that guy is 96, he probably hasn't got many years left on this earth. Yeah. But in that day, that's probably the most dressed up and on point.
He was main character energy all day, that granddad. He was fabulous.
It's that heightened thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so, and to have that and to acknowledge that,
and they made
with
the 250 first edit pictures, they made him a book to take to him very quickly on the run up, before I delivered the whole set, and he hadn't seen the video yet. bride's mum made him a book, and she sent me a video of him looking through the book, and I was just like, that's why we do this.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Like for him, he will look through and there'll be family members that he can point out and remember, and he's got such a strong memory and a moment of that day, and people made maybe 2 moments in the speeches where he had a standing ovation, and it was so special that it's a long-lasting memory for everybody about how special your own grandparents, how special he was on the day.
Yeah. And I think as well, that's like you say, talking back to that why at the beginning, to be able to give that to somebody that maybe doesn't have the budget to have full photo and video, it's kind of bridging that gap enough, isn't it? That whilst having all that, and even now, I think, say, from those first couple of years where you weren't including the audio, do you feel that putting that film together, now that you have got those sound bites, is far easier?
It's way more emotive and storytelling. Yeah. I think to start with, it almost felt like a kind of, probably the early days looked like a rubbish reel that I had put together with whatever I managed to get. But then I guess reels weren't really a thing in 2018.
No,
so. And now when I sell and highlight video to couples, I will say it looks like a really good reel. But one that you can't stop watching because you want to know. It has some story, it has some scene setting. If I've got a second shooter that's got a drone, I don't shoot with a drone. I never have managed that skill set yet. But I have 3 second shooters that all have drones. Okay. So that's one of my upsells to having a second shooter. Is look, if you want something with drone, it would be great if I can bring an extra person, because I don't have time to do that generally and do all of the other things.
So you mentioned seconds a few times. Are you always hiring hybrid seconds?
I don't, yes, unless I'm shooting a wedding where I've not been asked to do photos and film. For me, there's no point, because if I'm going to send them to go and do groom prep or get some establishing shots of the building, if they can't get a video clip for me, then I'm going to still have to do that. And there's the odd occasion where I would always still go and see the groom if they're in the same hotel anyway and go, hello, I'm here.
That control.
I can't. I want to tell
you do as a first shoot though, don't you? And you just kind of I'll just go see what's happening here.
And 30 seconds. Yeah. Couldn't do it.
No, and I think even when someone said to me, I've done all the detail shots, I still go, I'm just going to pop in. Just get 1 or 2. And it's not that I don't trust them, it's that I have a vision, and I think that kind of director brain in me has worked very hard to kind of tell that story in photos and in film for 8 years. And if I don't do that myself and know that I've got the shot that I might need, because they haven't, for every moment I'm trying to get at least 3 video clips that I go, here's a wide shot that tells a story of what the space looks like, here's a close-up of whatever's happening, and there's a point of view shot from the bride or groom. Or
that's a really cool system to have that in your head.
So I have that in my head.
Almost to tick that off for every kind of big moment of the day.
Moment. And that way, whether I use them or not, I've got them.
Yeah. And I think for me, it's wide, medium, tight and artistic. And you do wide, medium, tight of the same thing, so you've got context, and then you do something which is a bit out there, or doesn't necessarily include faces, or it's just hands or something. So
that's pretty much mine, which skips the medium. That's it.
Yeah.
And I think because I'm doing that for video, sometimes I'll do something that's really kind of quite storytelling for video. So you're looking at hands and how they're moving, and there's such a tiny movement that you're it's going to be lovely for the video. And then I'm like, I might do that for the photo too, even though I hadn't thought of it for photo first. And so more often than not, because the photographer side of me kind of kicks in, the photo is my starting point, and then I create the video. Yeah. But if there's a moment where I'm like, actually, that video looks lovely, let's match it for a photo too. Yeah. There's no harm in doing it.
I find some things work for photo and not for video, don't they? Like some of the traditions, and some things work for video and not photo.
Oh, definitely.
I think the cake cut is rubbish for both really, but for video, I barely include it.
Just get rid of it. Please.
I think there are definitely things where if I know there's a videographer on the day that will be supplying a film, that I would definitely not go as kind of ham-fisted and full into that moment as I would done, because I know it's going to play out far better for the film. I'll acknowledge it and there'll be something from it, but I wouldn't go, I need to really embellish this part of the gallery.
But a receiving line of hugs can be great for video.
Yeah, it is. It definitely
is.
We
love a bit of kind of close-up hugs. And
but don't you think, again, with the audio though,
people,
that kind of, when you only get 10 seconds to stand in front of someone, hearing what people do choose to say in those moments, I'll find sometimes with the receiving line is that if they're in great light, once you've got that one good hug, it feels very repetitive.
Yes, completely.
So you shoot 6 of them and you
it's hard to put them all in.
You pick the best one.
Yeah. If you're filming them, it definitely is hard to put them all into one highlight. If you've got a receiving line and you just got,
but you could also do a receiving line reel.
Yeah, or just sit a tripod up and watch everyone hug it.
Everything's content plays in my head too. That I'm like, oh mate, even if it doesn't make the highlight film, will I use it elsewhere?
Yeah.
Like I did a whole. I don't normally shoot for more than 5 or 6 seconds for video. That's kind of like my cut off for me of like, okay, that's enough.
Yeah,
but I was videoing a band that started rapping and coming out into the audience at a wedding last summer, and they did like an Eminem rap. I don't know, I'm going to try. I have a mic. I'm not going to try. They literally, like the whole dance floor around me was kicking off, and I was on a 16:35.
Nice.
And I was like, literally, it was held against my chest, and I was so tight into the action that like the bride and groom were right in front of me. Both the band members had come out, and I was like, just keep rolling. And I tried so hard to, like, I was almost watching the bar of the barn at the top be my straight line at the top of the frame. And I was like, if I can keep this as a shot, this is an incredible moment, one take. And I sent it to the bride and groom, additional to their wedding highlight film, and said, I've got some great stuff on the dance floor that I don't feel it's right that only I get to see it. Like, this 100%. Is your wedding, and it's so exciting. It's so lovely to share it with you.
That's why you make coin off keepsake edits. That's why.
And it's like a Brucey bonus to add that to it. And then I put it up as a reel, and it went.
There's something about it, and I love it sometimes from shooting. I'd rather shoot a tiny dance floor which is packed. Like if you shoot on a wide angle lens and the frame is filled, it feels so much like you're there that a 35 from the edge of the dance floor can't replicate.
No.
But it's really hard to do sometimes, especially in that first sort of, that first song after the first dance may be okay, but then once it really ebbs away, there's nothing the making a dance floor look empty than shooting it on a 20mm lens, is there?
No, I'm like, get close, or I just dance.
You just get involved,
much, so
you sort of have to dance through everybody anyway, don't you? So,
let's go.
So going on from what Tom just said, like obviously with us, or me, what I do afterwards, I find I have like quite a lot of footage left over. So I'm normally recording, and by the time it's all cold, it's like an hour of footage, and I'm doing a 10-minute film. So obviously, like you said, you're using most of your clips anyway, but you're still doing most of the things that edit into music and things like that. Would you ever like consider doing like, putting them all together and just doing like an uncut sort of edit with just
all the content creator?
It's basically just uncut footage, but it's
chucking it all in a Dropbox and stuff.
And I mean, I would say no, because I feel like the curation, is that the right word, of the highlight video is really picking out all the best stuff. And if I've got some extra shots, it will tend to be more of the same. And because I'm not putting any apart from maybe like the champagne spray or something, where I've set up a tripod and I've got a minute of footage where it will happen for a bit longer.
So generally, if it's left on the table, it's either just something that isn't
needed,
shaky, or it's
like if I've filmed for 5 seconds and the first 3 seconds I've changed the exposure in camera and gone, I've got it wrong, then I'm using the best of the best.
We hate ourselves for that.
We do hate ourselves
mid-ceremony, for that. I do it all the time. I've got an amazing shot, and I'm looking through, like, I'll just change it by one bit, and then I have to cut away when I do that.
I find that even for editing consistently, I kind of think, well, if I've not got exposure compensation under and it goes dark, just leave it. Because then if you're correcting one frame of that sequence in post, I might do them all as a batch. Where I try and correct it in camera to be right, and then I've got that frame which is under, then these 3 which are fine, then it goes.
You've got to manually
and then
do them all.
I have to do each one individually. But sometimes I think it's that shooting for the edit bit there, isn't it? Where you just kind of think, just leave it.
So I think no, I wouldn't. I've got a couple of times, and I've got one this year where I have just been asked to book. I've been booked just for video.
Just for video,
but only for a highlight film.
And okay, cool.
So they haven't.
That was one of our questions: is whether you would consider just doing video.
I wouldn't consider just doing video to offer more than what I offer.
You just have.
But I don't know. I mean, typically.
But you're saying not a 15-minute film. You're saying 15, like if it's highlights.
So you're still not going to deliver full speeches and full ceremony.
No, I'm not going to set up a tripod. I'm not going to bring a drone. I'm not going to bring in a gimbal. I'm going to deliver what I would deliver if I was doing 800 photos to deliver to.
Do you think there's going to be that part of you, like you were saying, when you get those photo-only weddings, where you're going to be there and going, I just want to take a photo?
I think what's going to be hard is when I shoot on my own, I'm never in the way because I'm the only person there. And I'm never questioning my decisions because I'm the one setting everything up. And I'm never thinking, oh, well, I wouldn't have done it like that. or I wouldn't light it like that, or I wouldn't put them there. And I know as videographers who are working with a photographer, sometimes they can make your wedding video great, or they can make it not so great if they're doing things with the couples that don't suit your style or how you want to do things. So I know the photographer, which is kind of slightly easier.
That's a big help, I guess.
And how I know the venue, which is slightly easier. And so I think it will be quite an easy one.
And will this be your first one where you've done solely highlights?
Second one where I've been asked just to do video, and the same thing with the call. I kind of make sure that there's no red flags of like they're not going to say to me on the day, "Oh, do you mind?"
Yeah, can you just let that roll in through the entire ceremony?
Is that all right? Do you have another camera? Because I don't want that to become part of my workflow. Yeah, because my workflow is pretty hot. And
I guess it has to be, though, to deliver with the immediacy that you're saying you're doing, even that big number of previews and a trailer, and then to try and get out a longer film as well. And, what sort of volume are you shooting in a year?
It's varied over the years.
Okay.
I shot 48 weddings when I was pregnant with my son, who's just turned 14. So that was 2010. He was born early.
That was only just for 48 weddings, even as photo only, is a lot.
Yeah, it was still a lot, especially when you're 8 months pregnant and you put on 5.5 stone and your nose is pregnant. I don't recommend that to your friends. But probably more so in the last post-COVID years, I have shot anywhere between kind of 25 and 35 weddings.
Which is still a really good number to be essentially doing 2 jobs on one day.
How many of them are hybrid?
80% of those will probably be hybrid. And then I've got about 17 corporate events almost every year that are regular.
You're a busy lady.
I don't get out much, but
you
I
always
do
seem very
take a
busy.
lot of photos.
On Instagram, you're like, another corporate event today. I do 30 weddings and nothing else.
Last September, I did 17 shoot days.
Yeah.
So as well as maybe 5 weddings, I also was doing corporates in the weeks and branding stuff, a couple of newborn shoots. So I have to be on it with my to-do list and with my communication with clients to make sure that I'm not messing up what they're expecting from me in terms of deadline. But
even just the kind of not only the shooting and the editing of that, but logistically managing
the admin.
That,
yeah, it's a lot.
Do you find a lot of that corporate stuff is repeat work, or are you still actively going and chasing?
No, I don't chase any work. Sounds awful. I'm very lucky that I've got 2 or 3 corporate clients that are 10 years plus, and 2 or 3 of them have 4 or 5 day conferences where they book me to go to Liverpool, Scotland, and I will disappear from Monday to Friday and go and shoot a conference of 4,000 surgeons are attending to learn about bones and surgery. And it's all quite interesting stuff, but it's just a set fee and it's quite a good one.
And again, I think I'll find that as well. I don't do anything to that volume, but I probably still do a dozen to 15 commercial jobs a year, but pretty much for the same 3 clients. And again, it's only the fact now that I probably could do with cutting them loose, but because I've worked for them for so long, I know the jobs. Them. I like those people because I've known them over that time.
I've been invited to one of their Christmas parties last year where they were like, "Come on, man, you've got to come. You're part of the team." And I'm like, "Am I really?"
But I've taken to let them go though.
It is,
and in times where weddings or family shoots or the world changes and you want to sort of slow up how many weekends you're working, it's really nice to have that variety.
That's true. You've said you touched on you've got a family, you've got children as well. Try and do 35 weddings, 50. But they still maybe want to spend some time with you. You want to spend some time with them. I
don't even know if they're at home that often. My eldest the other day was like, so I'm going to be in Manchester next weekend. I'll let you know when I'm home. Okay, cool. Great, bye.
I'll let you know when I'm home. You won't notice. So I
just look on the app. We have the Life 360. I'm like, they're on a train. Cool, okay, fine. Stay alive, be safe.
So, as long as on a train and not in a ditch.
There was once in the summer where they both went to the cinema in town and it looked like they were in the Thames. Where they were sat at the side of the Thames, and I phoned and was like, I'm just double checking you're not in the Thames, right? Okay, fine, that's okay.
So getting into nitty gritty of it, obviously you don't have to say exact numbers, but in terms of I
have no secrets.
In terms of your package pricing, how much are you charging extra for hybrid?
At the moment, and it may go up. So don't hold.
As of January 2025.
As of January 2025, and where we sit right now. And I've had lots of people telling me I should charge a lot more.
Okay.
And I find this a really kind of tricky balance because I feel like hybrid is such a lovely add-on. that I don't want to overprice it.
Because you see it as an add-on and not a solo thing, it's hard to...
So I will only book it at this rate if I'm already there to book for photography.
And you wouldn't just go for a day and
I have a different fee if they just want a highlight video. But at the moment I charge $800 as an add-on to my photography prices to do video if I'm already there. To do the photo.
Yeah, so you've almost kind of the hours that you're spending at the wedding are covered by the photography fee, and then that's an extra.
It's a bit of a kind of add-on to me. Most of my films will take me the best part of 2 days to edit. So it's an extra 2 days at my desk for that 800 quid.
Yes, if you think you're getting paid £400 a day, essentially for the edit, because you spent the time on the day.
I'm already there.
Whether you're pressing one button or the other button, you're still working.
It's a great top-up, like you say, considering you're already there.
I'm already, and it's less... It's like if I've had people say to me, why don't you just book another 6 weddings throughout the year and not offer both, or however kind of it works out. But
you think if you're saying 20 weddings, £800 each, that's 16 grand.
Yeah, I mean it adds up fairly quickly.
That's what I've literally put though. Is it worth the stress, or is it less stressful to do just a couple more weddings and make up that income?
I think it's so organic to me now to shoot both that I don't see it as extra work. I see it as a relaxing day if I don't have to do both.
But it's taken you 7 or 8 years.
It's a bonus if you don't have to.
It's a bonus.
Building that again, like you said, where we feel now a number of years into doing, or me, being almost 10 years into doing photo. I still get that nerves of excitement before a wedding.
Oh, I'm petrified every morning of every wedding.
Pretty much have that. I go into that with kind of a controlled nervousness now of like, well, let's see what we can do today. Let's see what we can find today that I didn't find last time, or that excitement of it. And I know that even on a base level, or even if I was maybe a little bit sick or whatever, that I can deliver that couple a gallery that they would be proud of, or they would be happy with.
And I think moving forward in the world of Instagram and algorithms and website too, that having some video from a wedding day is great marketing.
Oh, 100%,
And whether, whether I've had that wedding where I said that the Indian wedding where they had a videographer. There was one point where I was doing couple shots with the couple photo-wise, and he wasn't around. I didn't know where he'd gone, so I was like, I'll get a little bit of video for him of the couple walking towards me and walking past camera, like nothing kind of too, but just something I could send him, because I suddenly thought he's not going to have any couple shots. And
which is lovely, by the way.
It is.
We are 100% community over competition on this podcast. That's the reason that we do it. But to even, I think maybe because you are a hybrid shooter, to even have that into your brain to go,
He's not here. Well, also
I'll
then I used a little bit of that video as the opening of the reel to that wedding. So when I then shared that wedding, I had a little footage of them walking towards camera, and then it cut to photo. And I always feel that any of the reels that I put up that have got some video in it, whether the whole thing is a video and it's a trailer, or it's a 4-minute, or it's a goggle box moment, I've asked quite a few of my couples to film themselves watching their video for the first time.
Are they pretty happy with that? Because I always watch them. I think they're great, and part of the nosiness in me would love to see what my couples, because for the first 5 years I think that I shot weddings, because they were all local, I used to live in my gallery in person. I'd go around to their house and sit on the sofa as they
let's all hold hands
or whatever, and it's kind of awkward of
you're sat on one side of the sofa, they're cuddling on the other side.
Most of the time everybody liked them. They're all like, well, that's not missing, or they're sobbing. But in the end, one, because it just wasn't it wasn't manageable to keep doing that. But in some ways, I got all of the lovely feedback in person. Yeah. And I had no testimonials.
Right.
Because someone was like, well, I don't want to say right thank you, because I just sat on their sofa and watched them sob over there.
Yeah.
And so that's
cry again!
And that kind of thing. So, but I did wonder that, in the same way that pre-pandemic, if you asked someone to jump on a video call, you thought...
They might say no.
It was really awkward.
I mean, I always would have done meetups in people's houses in the run up to weddings and that sort of stuff in the past, but post 2020 it's always on video.
So
I've probably asked, I don't know, 4 or 5 couples over the last 3 years to do it.
But I guess that you do get some couples that you naturally end up being closer with, don't you? Or you feel that they probably might say yes.
And I wouldn't ask everybody, and I tend to, with the video, this is something I think I've mentioned at various times, and I kind of always feel like I shouldn't mention it because it's giving the game away for my couples, but with the video, when it's ready, I contact the groom.
Okay.
And rather than sort of going, hey guys, your video's ready, I'm going to send you a link, I can't always make sure I've got both of their contact numbers, and I will often say, you want to set up a date night for your missus?
The
video's ready, or it's going to be ready in 3 days, and it's Wednesday and the weekend's coming, get some champagne, make sure it's somewhere quiet. Like I try and almost set up an experience for showing the video rather than
I think that's huge, and we've spoken about this, haven't we, in countless episodes, is that sometimes it doesn't matter what you make, but it's when it arrives, the frame of mind therein when it arrives.
Rather than
like
just watching it
the
at
bride
work.
breaks it on the bus or the train on the way home without her partner.
Yeah.
But to almost... And, you know, you feel the same with like a dad reveal on the day. If you build them up to that moment,
completely,
they're halfway to cry before they've even opened that door. And it's the same when you deliver that photo.
You've spoken about delivering on Fridays, haven't you? So
I always
they
deliver
don't
on a
watch
Friday.
it.
It's the same.
Nice.
So I say to a couple, their slideshow will drop on a Friday night. So the chances are they finish work. They sit and watch a slideshow on a Friday night, and then the images appear in the gallery on a Sunday morning.
Right. Yeah.
So then I say, clear your Sunday.
Nice.
You can watch it. I'll make them sweat on a Saturday. Having to see 100 of those photos in the slideshow. And then they see the full lot.
See, I don't do that, but I think I should, because there's sometimes I'll deliver on a weekday evening, like 8 p.m. I'll just deliver it, and then 10 minutes later I'll get an email saying, "Oh, we loved it," and it's like, but you just sat there like watching EastEnders or whatever, and you decided to flick over to your wedding film. It's not a mindset, is it? And like you,
so I always say,
kind of feel like you need to feel it.
For me, it gives me natural deadlines. I know that I need to have those weddings finished, say by a Wednesday, so that I can then
deliver it
ready for the Friday.
And I think the more control we can take over those kind of things for the customer experience. Yeah. And for me, it always comes back to like, I really pride myself on becoming really good friends with my couples. Yeah. And like truly invested in their lives. And because I do newborn shoots and maternity shoots and family shoots and branding shoots,
you can follow them through.
I literally am like, hi, I'm your lifetime photographer and friend.
Yeah.
And it means I don't have to work that hard on a sales pitch to find new clientele because they're already my friends and they're already have invested money and time with me, and they really trust my vision with them too.
Do you think as well that we're doing the hybrid as well, because maybe for then the majority of the weddings that you shoot, you've not got a videographer.
Yeah.
They haven't got to make friends with lots of people.
No.
They've just got to trust you a lot.
And so often they contact me quite quickly after booking the venue that I then go, while we're on this call, who do you need? Who else are you looking for? Makeup, band, DJ, whatever it is. Let me gather my people. Like Avengers assemble. Let's go. Let's get them all together.
I love it when that couple allows you to help them. I always send emails and messages like throughout the process. Like if there's anything you need in like the build up to the process, let me know. And often there's nothing, but every now and then there's our florist hasn't got back to us, or some this has happened. Can you recommend anyone?
It's I think it's so.
Even though we shot a wedding together, didn't we? At Easter last year. And I only got pulled in literally, 3 weeks before the wedding?
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Because their photographer let them down, and they came to Chris and was like, do you know someone that might help us out? And he was like, actually, I do.
Yeah. Paul Tom off his Easter weekend.
So I was supposed to go away lambing. And
you were like, no,
I had a great time getting covered in champagne with you. Barn instead,
This goes off topic slightly, but with my kids over the last 10 years, we kind of made it a bit of family catchphrase to make sure you say, how can I help?
Yeah.
And it's like a real kind of like just knowing you're not on your own. And I think there's so often like we certainly as self-employed people who edit on our own, work on our own, and like don't feel like you've got support. And whether you do that with your clients or with like, other colleagues in the industry, and be able to say, well, how can I help? And like even silly example, but breaking my foot the last 2 weeks, I have had and I was a bit unsure whether I should put it on my Instagram. I'm like, oh, is it really, should it be content? But I thought, I'm going to put it out there that it's happened so that I can be a bit honest.
But you can't give that much of yourself to your couples and want them to be your friend and then hide big things like that in your life. And again, I think anyone should be fully comfortable with sharing as much or as little of their personal life as they feel comfortable.
And I've had so many photographers reach out and say, have you had to cancel any work? Is there any way do you need any help with anything? It's like, and I was surprised who it is that does that, who instantly, or says, like, can you get to the shops? Do you need anyone to swing over? Do you need any help with anything? And actually knowing the people are willing to help you and you feel part of that community, and whether you're building up that relationship with your couples and building who they book for their wedding, but we do it for each other.
But you
it's
reap
so
what you sow. I think if you come into this as purely, it's my job, it's a business, I turn up,
take.
That's it. They won't give anything back. But we said it when we spoke about Twitter, like my couples that not only voted for me, but then were messaging me on the night, or the times where I've been really, really busy and felt reluctant to kind of put on my stories, I'm going to go away for a week, because knowing that their weddings are still edited, to get those 6 messages from people going, you deserve a break, have the best time. that makes you kind of that anxiety ebb away, that you go, no, I do deserve this, or they're the people that are waiting for their films and are still telling me have a lovely time.
No,
that's so much nicer.
I've got one wedding outstanding at the moment, and that was December, and I let them know that this had happened between kind of Christmas and New Year, and she instantly messaged me and said, oh my God, I broke my foot 5 years ago. What a nightmare. Pop the pills. Please rest. Keep your foot up. Take your time. What you've delivered already, which is a 1-minute trailer and 250 pictures that they had straight after the wedding, before Christmas, is plenty. And then I sent them their audio, which was almost an hour and 40 minutes.
Oh, nice, yeah.
A few days ago.
And it seems even more above and beyond then.
And she was like, oh my God, I can't believe we've got this. She was like, I forgot that this was even part of the package. And then being able to deliver that, even though they know that you're struggling somewhat.
I love that, the more you make them feel like you're sort of in this together, the more that if something does go wrong, like you said, they're a bit more understanding.
Yeah, and I will reach out and say to them, look, you're top of the editing pile, and as soon as I can sit down for more than 20 minutes without my foot going fairly numb, I've got really bad pins and needles.
Back in like 2018, I was in hospital. I posted a story of myself in hospital, and I got 2 emails saying, does that mean my film's going to be late then? And I was like, I'm definitely not attracting the people that I want to attract. So like, things need to change immediately, basically. That wouldn't happen now, though, because like you say, like I'm much more proactive before the day, on the day. I'm much more like their friends, and it's like the people that I'm getting are much more me.
Yeah, and also maybe how we get to show up on something like Instagram with stories and regularly going, here's my dog.
Like they know you.
And I think so much of what we do as our branding as photographers is going, work with me, I'm a really nice person. And the more you can do that, I think the more your couples really buy into.
And I also think as well,
you
need balance in that. But I think some people think, I can show too much of that. Yeah. And sometimes it's much easier to show up.
Yes.
In that, I've taken my dog for a walk this morning and the sky was super red and I put a story up about it. Or, I did this. And you're still posting something. You still need to mingle some work into that to prove that you are there in that job. But
I own a camera.
But your grid serves that. And as long as you're sharing stuff and that. But I think sometimes people want that as well. Clearly, the fact that they do reach out and the rest of it is that if they are following you along for sometimes a fairly long journey, if they book you and their wedding's over a year away, is they want to build. Because sometimes there's not always a lot to talk about in that gap.
No.
But if they can see where you've been away, or the coffee that you've bought, or you follow them back, and they go away, or they go to see this, they go to the cinema and see this, and you go, how was it?
Even just seeing their like hen do, stag do's, anything that's kind of like part of their wedding story. I love scrolling through a hen do post and thinking, I'm going to meet all these people in a few weeks' time, and
but you start to piece that jigsaw together, don't you, before the day even arrives.
What are their hobbies? Who are their favourite people they're posting on Instagram over and over?
Well, like I had a wedding last year where the whole hen do was like almost Barbie film themed.
Oh, wow.
That's cool.
So when it came to the morning of the wedding, I was instantly kind of like dropping in Ken jokes. And I knew that it would be...
You understand.
It would be
you know what would land.
But I think in the end, that sometimes as well, like your couple sometimes think that you're far cooler than you are. Do you know what I mean? Like,
no one thinks I'm cool.
I feel like a maid of honour go, and like we were talking away and she's like, oh my God, like she's like, once my friend booked you, I started following you on Instagram. So she's like, I've been keeping up with, your holidays, your dog, your this and that. So she's like, we've had a 10-minute conversation about this and that. And she's like, you don't know who I am. And I'm like, no, I don't follow you. But I'm quite happy to talk about that. Or if the couples do, they think, he serves loads, or they serve loads of weddings every year. The fact that they've bothered to send me a message while I'm on my hen do to go, this looks incredible, hope you're having the best time. Is it almost, sometimes it can mean far more because they feel that you've taken time out of your day. Yeah, I mean, where in the end it's a full circle thing, isn't it?
I did a social media course during lockdown, and one of the things that kind of came up on that was like the whole aspect of Instagram is that you're meant to be social. You're meant to
it's got social media,
comment
and
chat.
Be social.
And I really kind of make sure that like WhatsApp and Instagram messages are quite regular to clients, and I think the more that you keep that open dialogue rather than disappearing on somebody, especially after their wedding, and they're like, I'm just a number and I've just got down the list. But if I can say to somebody that there's 3 ahead of you and I'm so excited to work on your wedding. But it opens
a channel of conversation, doesn't it? Like, all the formal stuff can come through email.
Yeah.
But when they're on their mini moon and they're eating brunch in a harbour somewhere and you text and go, oh my God, this looks incredible.
And I am genuinely interested in people's lives and people watching, because that's what I've signed up to do for my job.
Or even just sending a picture of your screen with of them on it. It's just like that gets them that little bit of a
Unless you
feeling
guys
that
find that
something's coming.
there's a funny little moment that ends up. It might be an outtake if you go like, I've
this,
enjoyed this so much. I need to share it with somebody.
Or like kind of like if they pull a funny face during the vows, and you're like, this might not make the video, but it's hilarious, and show them that.
They need to see this.
I think it's all part of. It's why we do what we do, and I think any time that I've like put up a post on Instagram about my why, it's always for the people rather than like the only people I really want to love that video and watch it is the couple. If everybody, if it gets 10,000 views, great. That might mean a few other people book me and bring me in as part
photographers
of
and
their
videographers
life.
like it, that's cool, but what really matters is that the couple is really going to appreciate it.
See their day and all the important people are marked, and like you've managed to get the parents and the grandparents and the bridesmaids dancing and all of
also an extra level of that is the couple in 20 years time, that they will probably appreciate it a lot more. It's one thing that gets more valuable over time. And so when I'm editing, when I'm editing, I'm always thinking what's going to look good now, but what's going to look good also in 20 years time.
But the fact that you even have that level of visibility
insight
or awareness, I think that only comes from having some tenure in this industry, or having lost someone in your own circle to feel that loss yourself, so that you can have that empathy.
Or just knowing what your couples
else.
appreciate, and getting those messages from couples saying, I really like that you shot this of Grandad because now he's no longer around. So thanks for shooting my wedding 5 years ago and getting this one shot.
Like you said, with the Grandad walking the bed down the aisle, there's a reason that got 158 views. It's heartwarming stuff to watch. Even though you have no idea who that Grandad or that bride is, you can relate it to somebody in your own life. And if you see that joy in that, it does bring. It's like nostalgia is fully a thing. And it's because we can all harness it, and and
1 o'clock
back on with it.
We got the bells.
The bells, So
we've been going for that long.
Yeah, we've been going for a while. So to wrap it up, then
Yeah.
obviously, like you mentioned your social media workshop, but you also do hybrid workshops, don't you? So
I ran 4 courses last year for kind of just introducing, more so for wedding photographers. That's kind of how I pitched it. I had a few branding and other photographers that were like, or family photographers going, can I do this? And I was like, yes, but I'm really placing the course and telling tips about wedding days, and that will be all the examples. So it can be applied to various bits of people's, photography businesses, but it's weddings that I'm, and more so for wedding photographers that are really already quite happy and comfortable in their lane.
So pretty much from where you were when you went to Camera Hannah's course
so
back in 2018.
I had lots of people who'd been going for like 10 plus years come on the course, and that's a bit scary because you're like, oh, you're really established.
But when you went to that course,
really know what
you
you're
were looking
doing
for a new challenge, and hopefully they are the same.
So and the technology and the ability to get audio and other bits and pieces and editing suites and stuff now, some of the people that came on those courses were making videos that I would be proud of to deliver myself within months and weeks.
Does that make you feel like a proud mum though? And that's like,
I'm like mama bear. So I've got 4 WhatsApp groups of all the different workshops, and everyone is sharing kind of like, I've done this video of my kids, or I've done this at a branding shoot. What do you think, Hannah? And I'm like, I'm so
Do you find it's mainly just a bit of like, it's not actually that much different. You just need to open that door in your brain of like, when people sort of build something up in their head, like this is going to be far too difficult for me, I'm not going to try this because I'll mess it up. It's mainly that, like what you've been saying on this podcast, like, you have 30 seconds for everything. Like just slow time down.
I think any new skill needs a bit of consistency, right? My youngest got a unicycle last Christmas and was determined that he would be able to unicycle across the driveway. He got up at 6 a.m. every day for 7 weeks and was going round in circles around the 2 wheelie bins for weeks and not being able to do it. And now he can go 27 meters without touching anything.
That's crazy.
And like, it's really silly as an example maybe, but actually that kind of like drive and consistency to go, if I'm going to get better at something, I have to practice. I have to put the work in. I still sit and research YouTube videos on color grading, and like now I'm really keen on my audio. I've been looking at all of the different scales, and I don't know what the technical term is, but like levels and like playing with them, going, hang a minute, if I change that to a number 6, I don't know what I'm doing technically, but the bass is sounding a little bit more kind of
it's
powerful.
equalizer, is it?
Equalizer, is that right? So I'm playing with all of those things and researching it on YouTube.
I don't even touch that, to be fair.
But the more like sometimes when it just sounds a bit tinny and you're like, hang a minute, if I can make this sound more powerful.
So what do you use for audio?
I'm recording on the TX.
Sony TXs, yeah.
50s.
Yeah, there's presets for them as well that you can download and put on, and it like it just
I can
tidies up
learn
all the
new things,
equalizing.
guys.
And,
We can just keep learning.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's kind of the full circle thing, isn't it? Is that even though here you are now, you know, from that moment that you went on Camera Hannah's workshop in 2018, curious about a new challenge within this world, you are here now 7 years later, and although you are educating others to begin that journey, you're still not resting on your laurels. You added the audio, you're now fiddling with the audio. There's always something, isn't there? And that wanting to get better, even nearly after 2 decades in the same job.
It's the drive, and I think you're only as good as the last wedding you shot, right?
Yeah.
There's something in my creative brain of like, I've got to keep proving myself.
Yeah, that's good.
And I think as soon as I don't feel like that, then this isn't the job for me anymore.
100%.
And as soon as I'm not nervous, I always kind of feel like being nervous the morning of a wedding just shows that I care and I'm ready to show up.
You must have the maddest like wedding anxiety nightmares.
I mean, the idea that I press a button and
video.
nothing happens is my, like the squidgy button as they walk towards you.
A lot of people have nightmares, don't they? Like it's a massive thing in like the videographers groups and stuff that you see.
I shot one wedding. This is probably about before holsters became a thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is probably like 15, 16 years ago. And I was a church wedding. Bridesmaids were all walking down one at a time. And I'm photographing. And the button didn't do anything. Pressing, nothing's happening. I was just doing photos. Pressing, shit, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And I popped out the battery, popped it back in
As you
again,
do.
had reset, turn it off, turn it on. Oh God, the bridesmaids are still coming and nothing's happening. And I could feel, I'm never flustered. Yeah. Like I stay, certainly in that kind of moment, can stay pretty calm. And I could feel my chest going red, you know, that kind of like, I'm going blotchy. I can feel I'm going blotchy. Oh my goodness. And I had a second camera. It was at the back of the church in my bag. And I couldn't get to it because it would mean running around the back of the church and then running back again. So I was like, okay, last ditch attempt here, battery out, battery back in again. And as the bride hit the top of the aisle, my camera started working again. And it was at that moment I went, I need something where I can have 2 cameras on me at all times. Because it never happened to me before. And then that changes how you feel about things and making sure that, yes, having a backup is great, but what about if the backup's not with you?
There was a crazy video the other day in the videographers group. Rue put a video on, and it was literally, he was like, if you ever had wedding nightmares, this is like the night before the wedding. This is an actual real life one.
Oh no.
And it was literally just a 10 to 15 second video of him sprinting, and you can't really see what's going on or where he's sprinting, but then he lifts the camera up and the bride's like halfway down the aisle already. And it turns out he went to like take a shortcut somewhere, ended up getting lost, and then the bride was already walking down the aisle and he was like halfway across the venue somewhere, so he's like sprinting towards the ceremony area,
and that's when
he lifts the camera up, the bride's like walking down the aisle.
I've never had that. I've had a couple of
every wedding nightmare I've ever had.
I remember being at like an outdoor venue once, like a walkway around the outside down to the sea, marquee in the middle. They told me multiple times in the first call, the last call, the rest of them, they weren't having a first dance. So I'm walking down to scope out sunset. As I'm walking back, I hear cheers, I hear claps, I hear music.
Oh, I hate it.
And so I again pick up into a sprint. I come running into the venue as literally they go, everybody, Mr. and Mrs. whatever, and everyone claps. I missed the whole damn thing.
Yeah.
And so I said to the couple, like, when we going out for sunset, like, so what happened there? And they were like, oh, well, kind of our bridesmaids weren't going to take no for an answer that we weren't having a first dance. So they just told the DJ to start and always pushed us onto the dance floor.
Right.
Yeah.
So they,
I'm like,
at least you can't get blamed, I guess, in that moment.
And you fess up straight away.
Oh, it's so much easier.
I had one, what we spoke about in the pod before, where I missed the entire speeches.
Yeah.
I was sat in the next room and missed the whole thing. They told me the speeches were after the meal. And again, they just stood up and did them all.
There's nothing more anxiety-inducing than sitting in the next room and you hear ding, ding, ding as a
hate
videographer,
it.
and you're like,
oh,
I set up nothing. Yeah.
I did
You're throwing micros at people.
This might be a little bit, maybe too much information, but I did a wedding 2 or 3 years ago like that. Speeches were before meal. I was sat with the wedding guests, luckily, so again, sat down. I forgot speeches were before the meal. Every bride and groom came in, they sat down, and then I was like, okay, people came in, started serving bread rolls. So I was like, oh, maybe the speeches aren't first then. Took my hold fast off back of the chair, cameras on top of the piano, walked through out of the room into the toilet.
Oh no.
Sat down, pulled my trousers down.
Oh no.
Ding, 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 ding. Oh no.
And I'm like, well, I can't stop now. And literally, I literally managed to get off of the toilet, put my trousers off in one fluid motion.
Oh, good
and
God.
run back into the room and still managed to get like the last minute of the dad's speech.
Yeah.
And then that's
lucky you weren't doing video.
And then embarrassingly sat down with the friends of the bride at the end of this table.
Oh,
and she's
God,
going,
you missed it.
So how much of that did you miss? And
Oh,
it's
God.
Like, we say nothing about this. And there is a photo of Dad.
And that's all we need.
Yeah.
That's all we
There's a photo
need.
of Dad raising a glass.
Yeah.
And a few reaction shots for good measure. It's
Yeah.
really cool.
Or just throw some in.
reaction
Yeah,
shots
borrow,
from
yeah,
the end
I'd
of the
imagine.
best man speech,
Yeah.
which then were after the dinner. It turned out Dad just wanted to speak before
just
the
get
meal
it
to get his
done.
nerves
Yeah.
out of the way. So yeah.
I mean, there's so much
I
of
was
things-
already crapping myself at that moment, so by then it doesn't matter.
There's so many things like that can go wrong. I mean, I think most weddings, I will say to a groomsman or a bridesmaid, I'm going to be next door if anything looks like it's exciting or I'm missing it and I'm not in the room. Come find me. Like I almost place it on somebody else.
After that speeches thing, when the wedding coordinator knew I was there and actively didn't come and get me, and I had a heated discussion with him outside the room. I always find that now that I almost need to use the wedding coordinator or the catering manager like
just go, come on, team, guys.
It's
it's a
just
team.
let you know, I'm going to be here.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to start anything or anything's going to happen,
don't do it.
Just please, can you just come and someone just come and wave at me or tell me that this is going to happen.
There's multiple methods
and it's
of
for
that.
that reason that I never pack my kit down.
No.
It never goes back in the bag. It literally sometimes
Just ready.
it will literally be on the table in front of me whilst I eat, and all of those, or if I get up, the cameras move with me, so I'm never at that point where if I run, my kit's coming with me. Yeah.
I have multiple ways of doing that. I have it in the contract saying you must designate someone to come and grab me. I'm also obviously diving in and out. And I tell the couple I'm constantly coming in to find out when the speeches are.
Yeah.
But there'll be
Where
that
are you
one
at?
time
I
where
said,
they decide to do
"What tables
it
have been cleared?"
after dinner or something, or between the mains and the dessert, or so, like you say, Dad stands up thinking he just wants to get it out of the way. There'll be times when that happens. So I'll put it in the contract and I'll say in the pre-wedding call that if you need to just designate someone to grab, I don't want you to have to do any work, but you've got bridesmaids and groomsmen for a reason, and we're going to be in the next room.
I think it's church weddings that worry me about that. You know, like if you leave not long after the bride does and you turn up at the same time. I've had one bride who got out of the car and was headed to the back of the church, and I hadn't even got my camera bag out yet, and I was like, whoa. So I always say to a bride as they get in the car with Dad, until you see me at the window, don't get out of the car yet. Just hold tight.
But again, that comes from experience, I think. That's what I always say.
It's just preempting, isn't it?
That's one of the major reasons that I love one venue weddings.
Yes.
But I think that's normally the last thing that I'll
Parking,
say. If
I'm
I'm leaving
about.
a bride house, knowing that I'm going to a venue, it's if you do not see me out of that car window, you stay in the car. Even if the chauffeur opens the door and does whatever, and
just
if
wait.
I am not there, you do not get out. I will be there.
Certainly with a church, you've got to get your camera in, you've got to introduce yourself to a vicar, you've got to find quickly what the rules are. There's so
especially
much
when it's
kind of
a church in a country lane, and you're normally the last car there, so there's all the parking spaces have been taken.
Yeah, I've thrown my keys a couple of times at groomsmen and said, "Park my car, I need to get in."
I've just mounted Verges sometimes, and
especially I've got to mic everyone up too.
Yeah,
as soon as I get in, and I'm not there in advance.
See, in those
that's
moments,
all of it.
Dump my car in
take
car
off 2 lens caps and off you go.
Yeah, but the TX is a great because there's no wires and literally, you're pressing, pressing set for record, press to hold, so you know that if they press anything,
even then, it's finding people. The vicar's got to be mic'd up if they allow it, and then they're going to send you to the back of the church or whatever because that's the only angle you're allowed to get in that church, and it's
so you've got to try and leave one on the lectern in case there's a reading.
There's only so. I mean, I plan for as much as I can, which is where the kind of screensaver and the organisation and group shots and all that kind of thing. The more I can be in control of, then the bits that throw you are not going to throw you as much.
Yeah.
100%,
and I think trying to do both photo and film, if you're not organised or you're someone that's scatty, I do not leave anything in my car that I'm going to need.
Yeah.
That's literally where I kind of strap my bum bag to me, and my hips may hurt. They don't lie, but they hurt after a wedding because I've literally walked around as if my camera bag's on me all the time. I've got all my batteries, my chargers, mics. I get anything that I might need from sewing kits and everything else in my bum bag, my Mary Poppins bum bag. Because if I don't, and then I go, oh God, I need lights, or
that
bring
pain in your
everything
hips
in.
is nowhere near the pain of the dressing
Forget
down
it.
you're going to give yourself in the car on the way home.
No, because if I've missed it and I'm the only shooter and it's on me, then I've got to make sure that I'm prepped and organised and and within all of that, I've also got to be breathing in the day.
And that's why experience matters more than anything. You can watch as many YouTube videos, you can pick up a camera and be great at it, but the experience in weddings matters more than anything else. Yeah. Because I always say to people outside the industry and inside the industry, because when you tell someone, oh, I do wedding videography, and they're like, oh my God, that must be the most stressful, hardest thing. And it's like, what's the worst thing, mistake you've made and things like that. And you say like, once you are experienced and you know what to expect and you set those backup plans and things like that, there's not a lot that you can mess up that you can't recover from.
No.
And that's where you want to get, isn't it? Where you can turn up to a wedding and be like, even if I do miss this one tiny little thing, or I turn up a little bit late to the church, I know the ways that I can get around that. I've got cameras in my sling bags ready to go.
Oh yeah, I think you said that you're only as good as the last wedding you've shot, and I think even to have any kind of length in this industry is you are only as good as the systems you put in place.
Yeah, the problem-solving skills that we have. I think so much of what I feel are some of my most important skills as a planner, as a people person, as a big sister on the day. Like all of those things that come as part of the, like you were saying, of kind of the reveal to dad, that we can have so much power in that moment, feeling rushed and unemotional as we can, getting dad to stand outside the room, setting the bride so that the dress looks incredible, and saying to a dad, she looks incredible. Wait till you see her. Oh my God, your little baby girl is about to get married. You can take that moment and direct it in a way that will be emotive.
But that's what comes out your mouth.
Go, open the door.
When in your head it's like, crap, the light's moving, doing this. I need to get those curtains done. I make sure I've got that angle. And your brain's going like that. But
and especially if you've got a wedding planner who's kind of going, sorry, time's up, and you need to go down.
That's one of the other things that I'll say as soon as they walk out the room after the 45-minute warning. Is that's normally at that point I'll say to that bride, do not listen to what she says. No. It is your day. Nothing is going to happen without you. So as long as you are not ridiculously late, do not let anybody hurry you. She'll have another wedding tomorrow and someone else to hurry along. But today is your day.
No, and I think that kind of slow time down thing I say to myself, I find myself saying it to couples too, that we've now got 15 minutes for couple shots. One, walk ahead of me for a minute, hold hands and just tell each other how you felt this morning, and do what my husband's done for the last 26 years, pretend I'm not here. Just have a minute by yourselves. And actually, if you do that for them, they remember those moments and are living that quiet time together in the photos and the film in a experience kind of way, more so than you are I need to get this shot, now we need and
they will remember as well that in that moment that you are not only thinking about your job, taking photos, taking film, you are thinking of them and giving them an experience, and it's that experience of how you make them feel by giving them that. And I've found that over this year, that I've found that if I take couples out for sunset, is I'll leave them out there now. I'll say to them, don't come back, you don't have to come back with me. If you want a minute, take a minute. People know I've taken you away. Just have a little moment in yourself. I've got the photos that I need from this moment, but watch that sun go down together. Have a little check-in, come back in your own time.
Okay, so to round it up then, just for people who are listening to this thinking, oh, I want to get into hybrid, what would you recommend as the first steps?
Obviously come do my course.
Of course.
Are you running more?
I will be, yes. I'm looking into venue for new courses for this year and potentially putting it online. And
not to do a shameless plug, but we would recommend the Cozy Club.
No, absolutely. I'm going to have a little wander around. As slow as I can on my foot, hobble around later to have a look at what we can do here. But I am looking to put it online as a course that people could buy. To be fair, as I did doing Hannah's course and then finding stuff on YouTube, there's plenty of info out there as to people to kind of start practicing. I would probably say to anybody, before you go and practice at a wedding, maybe take your own kids out, your friends' kids, do a kind of trip to the park video. I did quite a few videos of my kids at a swing park, in the forest.
Go ape type thing.
Just trying to follow focus and to get variety of shots, and then
just get used to the video
and do the process, video something to tell a story, work out what things work, when you put it together and what you missed and what you then needed. And you could offer a 1-minute film, a 2-minute film. You could offer the couples almost like a content creator that you will try and get a few little clips to make reels for their wedding, but you don't offer an edit at all. You know, I think there's so many ways to go with it that you can still benefit from it, and your clients can still have something that is an add-on that isn't you trying to create a 5-minute highlight film with audio, with drone shots. And I think there's so much still to have success from it without being at that stage yet. And as I went to the Coda conference last year, and I felt like I'd taken some nuggets away from that I've applied to my last few edits that I'm like, oh, I think this has improved it again.
That's a good one as well, like hang out with other videographers and find out, you know, what's making them tick at the moment, which Coda conference obviously did. It had a lot of not only like technical aspects, but it had a lot of like, this is what we're trying to capture and the way we're trying to capture it.
Yeah, and I think understanding the language and the different aspects of how different mediums, creative mediums take on an industry means that you can kind of get in the headset of a videographer and a photographer, and you're just happening to do it.
I think that's huge as well. Like, again, not to shamelessly plug the podcast that you're listening to, but I have learned so much. Like, I had so many ideas about what I thought videographers needed from me or how they did their job. And it's not until listening to you talk or to us to doing this podcast is that I feel that I've understood the mechanics of videography so much more from doing that. And so just kind of surrounding yourself or listening to you know, not just this podcast but other things, or listen to videographers talk on YouTube or whatever, and kind of not doing what you think that they should do and actually understanding how they work. Even like you said, maybe you don't think of yourself as a videographer. But even from like Chris has recognised over the course of this conversation that you definitely have a mindset of a videographer in parts of the day. And I think even just being able to change your mindset from photographer that's hitting the record button to kind of thinking, okay, I need to do this, I need to do that. That journey of doing that would be huge in itself.
And I think it's one of those actions for me of adding something to your business, whether you choose to add a mentoring calls or education, or you look at other people's websites and tell them what's right and wrong with them. You know, like if you add something else to your business that can add monetary value to your business and it improves your skills and your interest in your own job, there doesn't seem any harm in trying it.
Definitely.
Amazing. So if people do want to find you, where can they go? Plug yourself?
Sainsbury's, find me at Sainsbury's. We're hobbling along. My Instagram is hannah.macgregor.photo.film. It's a bit of a mouthful.
You have to think about that one.
I'm like, what did I change it to? And then the website's hannahmacgregor.co.uk.
Amazing. Well, thank you in your.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Your booted state for making it here, hobbling
making
up
the journey up the stairs.
Well. Thank you for helping me up the stairs.
Not at all. No, absolute pleasure to have you along. And I think because we are a photo video podcast, to have someone on that kind of has a foot in both camps,
quite literally,
you've been absolutely the perfect guest. And I've really enjoyed the chat.
Fabulous.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation. Amazing. And there'll be a lot of people out there now thinking about doing what you're doing and. Yeah, and they might be your future second shooters. So.
Well, I'm speaking at 3 events this year, so they'll hear me at various things, and I'll be plugging that on my Instagram too.
You never have to.
Interesting. There you go. Yeah.
I'm everywhere.
We could have been here for another couple of hours. We've got loads more to ask, but
but and today as well, because we're at a lovely restaurant, we haven't got a meal deal for lunch, have we?
We're going to actually have a proper food.
Cook for us. So thank you for coming along on this journey. I feel it's been quite a long one, but hopefully you've taken something from it. Thank you again to Hannah for coming along.
Pleasure.
Thanks for listening.
See you next one.